Welcome to the Global Pulse, a short video series where our experts break down a trending topic in international business and why it matters to you.
As an undergraduate, I loved my international trade theory class. It brought to my mind visions of caravans on the great trade routes of the world, the Silk Road, the Maghreb, and also of storm-tossed ships that would sail at great risk to trade in faraway places. Today, when we think of trade, the image that comes to mind is of giant container ships. A big problem for international trade is the carbon footprint of freight transportation. This is a very significant contributor to total emissions. It's hard to give a single estimate because impact depends so much upon how you measure it. Carbon dioxide emissions from international freight is estimated by the OECD to be about 7% of global emissions. International container shipping accounts for about 2.5% of global emissions. Unfortunately, total emissions are projected to quadruple by 2050 from their 2010 levels. The carbon impact is much larger when you consider the fact that a lot of production has shifted away from the United States and other Western countries to places like Mexico and China. Their production takes place through carbon-intensive methods and is then imported right back here. So even though emissions have been reduced domestically in the US and Europe, you get a very different picture when you take into account carbon emissions of imports. So what's to be done? There's a movement seeking to prioritize buying local. For instance, getting fruits and vegetables from local farms rather than from farms in Chile or South Africa. However, what would have a really big impact is if carbon emissions from freight transportation could be eliminated. Efforts are underway for the electrification of ground transportation, but shipping poses a particularly difficult challenge. On this front, there was welcome news last week. Maersk, the world's largest container shipping line, announced that it had ordered 8 vessels which are able to run on carbon-neutral methanol. The company also now plans to order only new ships which use carbon-neutral fuel. This is a bold move and very welcome, even though it's unclear whether Maersk will be able to bring the rest of the shipping industry with it. Part of the problem for participants in the industry is technological uncertainty. It's not yet clear that methanol will be the winning technology. Natural gas, hydrogen, and ammonia are all still very much in play. Maersk hedged somewhat because the ships will all have dual-engine technology, enabling them to run on traditional fuel as well. Still, Maersk CEO Sven Skou felt the urgency of the moment and chose to act to meet shipping's climate challenge. For this, he deserves credit. I'll end with a word on the policy front. I mentioned earlier the problem that production of carbon can shift from countries with stringent policies to those with more lax regulation or standards. The European Union has announced that it plans to proceed with a carbon border adjustment tax. The idea here is that if the cost of emitting carbon in the production of a good within the EU is higher than the cost incurred by a competing exporter overseas, then a countervailing tax would be imposed on exports. This is probably going to be very complicated to implement, and EU's trading partners may not receive this policy well. But I would expect more policy responses to the climate change challenge in the very near future.